Well, hi there, food friends. It's Kevin, and welcome to Cavalcade of Food. Today, we're going to look at some vintage appliances, specifically the percolator. So we're going to take a look at automatic percolators, regular non-automatic or stovetop percolators, a little bit about how they work, and the different brands that were popular. I will tell you that what I'm going to do is first take a little camera tour of the percolators that I have on display, which is only part of the collection that I have, because the percolator was actually the first vintage appliance that I started to collect many, many years ago. So we're going to take kind of a walk around the cavalcade, because I have percolators on the top shelf all the way around the building. And then we'll come back and look at a few specific examples and how they work and get perking. Now, as we start the tour, one caveat: these aren't all percolators, but they are all coffee makers. So you'll see some vacuum pots mixed in, such as that one on the top there that is in two pieces, sort of. That is a Cory, I believe, or maybe that's a Sunbeam. I can't see from here. And but you'll also see I have a number of ones. These were popular in the 60s. These are the clear percolators with a glass body, and you can actually see the coffee as it brews and perks away. Proctor-Silex, among others, made those. But you'll see percolators from Sunbeam, West Bend, General Electric, Farberware, very popular coffee makers in the 50s and 60s, and quick, very fast. You'll see some Poly-Perks. These were still made into the 1980s, made with a polycarbonate plastic. I don't use them because I don't know how stable the chemicals are that make up the body, but they're cool to look at. You have a lot of house brands, we'll see. Here's one from Montgomery Ward's, but you know, many of the department stores had their own brand made by another company. There's a drippolator as an example. Here's a very small Cory percolator made for the stovetop. Again, there's another Sunbeam Coffee Master. That's a vacuum. Very popular too, the Pyrex all-glass percolator. They make really good coffee. The problem is that the stem and basket are made out of glass, and boy, do those things break easily. Corningware made percolators, both stovetop and automatic. And a lot of people like those, particularly if they had other cooking utensils in the pattern. Universal, very popular brand of coffee maker. There's another Pyrex. There's a Kenmore. One of my favorite, this is a West Bend Perk. They made these in many shapes, sizes, and colors, anodized aluminum. They're very quiet and make very good coffee. That's a vacuum pot. Here's another clear bodied. This one is Eaton Department Store, which is Canadian, and labeled a Viking, but that's made by Proctor-Silex. Again, I'm going to try to get both. This section of the Cavalcade has 2 shelves of coffee pots. Here's a really kind of an oval-shaped General Electric. I'll turn it this way so you can see the shape of the coffee pot. And it has, on the side, it has a little water meter. You can see the level of coffee. Again, a Poly-Perk. Trying to get them all here. Another Corning. There's sort of a fancy one with a wooden handle. This big one is a 20 cupper. That's a Cory Jubilee. That is a big coffee pot. But you know what? When you've got a party, that's just what you want. Most coffee urns, and I did a coffee urn video some time ago on Cavalcade, most coffee urns really are percolators. They work the same way. Now, there's a small coffee urn as an example, Chilton, and that is... Okay, see this one? The Sunbeam Coffee Master Percolator. That's the one that started it all, folks. Right there. That's my first one. Isn't it a beauty? I've always loved the style of that. It makes excellent coffee. Now there's one that a lot of people like. That is a General Electric. Kind of is egg-shaped. They made that model for many years. There's another West Bend Flavor Perk. There's another West Bend Flavor Perk. That large double one there is actually a West Bend Drippolator, Poly-Perk. There's a fun little round percolator. There is a, I'm sorry, this video is going to probably be a little shaky. There's a great Proctor-Silex, another see-through body. Cutting over here through the typewriter room. And we'll pick up here with our percolator. That's a Jet Perk. Small, but fast. There's another Corning. That one is an electric percolator. Here's a a buffet percolator, fancy. It's got a beautiful kind of a Bakelite knob there on the spout. But again, great for parties. Avocado green. Here's a Mirro coffee urn percolator. Still has the tag on it. There's another sort of chrome-plated, fancy. It's got a very fancy glass perk top. There is a very traditional Corningware blue cornflower percolator. That's actually a Corningware drip olator. There's a West Bend. They came out with a plastic body coffee pot to compete with the Poly-Perk, which was really popular when it came out. It's another one of those GE pots, universal. Mirro-matic. West Bend. Little small Poly-Perk there. There's a bright red Poly-Perk, kind of like that two-tone one there, sort of a brass and chrome. There's a big, tall Sunbeam, tall and slender, very pretty. That's a Mirro. There's another see-through pot. This one has a little bit of a different design on the glass body. There's another stovetop. It's not Pyrex, that was made by somebody else, I believe. Another see-through pot. There's a, look at that funky plastic bodied. It's a mini Poly-Perk. There's a West Bend Flavo-Perk in red anodized aluminum. They came in blue, in green, kind of a bronzy color, and then just brushed aluminum. There's another really cool, fun Sunbeam shape. Mirro, another Sunbeam, another clear body. Avocado green. There's another one of those big Cory Jubilees. There's a Perk with a red plastic handle for a buffet. There's a small Farberware, 4-cupper. Those are nice. Then I have just a few of these on display. These are sort of sets where you had a tray, a sugar and cream and percolator. Again, for parties. These were popular wedding and shower gifts for a long time, back in the days when people actually still entertained. And a lot of different companies made these. Okay, we're back. My arm's tired from holding that camera up here, but that took us sort of around the collection again, just to show you of the ones that I have out on display. And now I've got a couple here that we're going to make some coffee with. I've got a good old West Bend here, one of the flavor perks. Again, I think I showed some examples of this as we were going around. And then I have a non-automatic here that we're going to use as well to make coffee. So what's the difference on an automatic and a standard percolator? Well, the automatic it heats the water, it goes through the perking cycle, and then it shuts off and maintains a warm temperature to keep your coffee warm. So basically, And a lot of you know this, but how a percolator works is this is the stem and the basket that's on the inside of the percolator. So you've got water. The water is brought up to a boil. And you can see there's a hole at the bottom here where the boiling water gets forced up this tube. It comes out the top, and usually there is sort of a diffuser plate here that the water falls on top of with many holes, and that water goes into the basket where the coffee grounds are, and of course there are all kinds of holes in here, and it drips down. And it just keeps recirculating, recirculating, recirculating. So because of the way a percolator makes coffee, you actually, to my taste, use less coffee when you're using a percolator than if you are using, say, a drip coffee maker, where the hot water is going through the grounds a single time. Here, that is going over, and the water is going through over and over. The coffee is getting stronger every time it passes through those grounds, which is why some people think that percolated coffee certainly has a different flavor because the brewing method is different, but some people, myself included, love the richness of a cup of percolated coffee because of the multiple times that the water is circulated through the grounds. So I'm going to bring the camera in a little closer, and I'm going to prepare both of these percolators to make some coffee. And so in order to do that, one, you need to have coffee. So I got a can of coffee here. Most coffee today is just ground in what they call an all-purpose grind, okay? Meaning that it can be used regardless of the method you use in which to make the coffee. Perk, drip, vacuum, press, whatever, okay? All-purpose grind, and that's what most large marketed commercial just coffee you buy in the supermarket is. I will say there is one brand of coffee, and this is not a sponsored video, that I love because I think it's excellent coffee, Torquay, and they are out of Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And if you live on the east side of the state of Wisconsin, I'm sure you're familiar with this brand, and they sell it in the stores. They actually make a grind. This one is made for percolators. And the difference is that the grind of this coffee is much coarser. And it's certainly more coarser, say, than an all-purpose grind is. And you have to remember, when all these percolators that you've seen, when these were all made, and you went to this market to buy ground coffee, if that's what you bought, there was percolator grind everywhere. Every major brand, Maxwell House, Chase and Sanborn, Hills Brothers, you name it. They all had a percolated grind. Some of them also had a drip grind or a vacuum grind. And so it was no problem getting the right coffee for your percolator that is a little coarser ground. Now, if you start with whole bean coffee and you grind it yourself, which is certainly probably the freshest way to do it, you can do a percolator grind depending on the grinder you have and make it a little more coarse. Or if you use one of those big giant grinders that they have in the stores that you pour the coffee beans on top and it comes through and it has all those settings, there's a percolator setting on there, and you'll find that the percolator setting is more towards the coarser end rather than the finer setting, which is like drip, and then espresso is really fine. So you can grind your beans to percolator order if in fact you use a percolator. Do you? I would love to know in the comment. What do you use to make your coffee? A percolator? A drip? Drip and pour over are really the same thing, okay? There's automatic drip, obviously, like a Mr. Coffee, and then there's a manual drip, which is like a Melita or a Chemex or something like that, but it's all drip. Or a French press or vacuum. I don't know. I'd love to know. I love to know how people like to make their coffee. I go between a drip and a percolator. I got plenty of percolators to use, and I have my favorites, this being one. It's kind of well worn. I probably used this percolator 1,000 times. Anyways, let me get in here, and then I'll show you a little bit more what we're doing. Okay. Let's start with our manual, old-fashioned stovetop percolator. Again, this is not automatic, so what it means is you got to watch it. We're going to put it on the stove. I've got water in here for about, maybe 4 cups of coffee or so. And the thing is, here's what you want to do. You always start with cold water when you're making coffee, okay? Cold water. And then put as much water as you want to make coffee in the pot. Then over here is we've got our stem and basket. So I'm going to put our stem here. Have that ready. Now, this is the basket. Now I'm going to use the percolator grind for this non-automatic one. And because it's a percolator grind, I don't worry about a filter here because not many of the grinds should fall through the holes. If I were using a regular or all-purpose grind, I would use a filter. What's a percolator filter, you ask? Well, I'm glad you did. There are 2 styles. One is called a disc filter, just like this. It's just a very thin paper filter. It's got a hole in the center, and it goes into the basket. Let me get our basket out of the West Bend here. Okay, it just goes down in here. Okay, there's also what they call a wraparound filter, which is just what the name implies, and that is it's got a hole in the center. You put that in the basket. You put your coffee grounds in, and then it's got 4 holes in each corner, and you put those holes through the stem in the basket, and it wraps around the grounds like this. It makes it virtually impossible for any of the grounds to leach out. It's a little more work, so it just depends. Again, this one, I'm just going to put the coffee grounds in. Now, I'm going to rinse it first with a little cold water. Why do I do that? Because that'll put some water in some of the holes there and just help to hold the coffee in. So we've got coffee for 4 cups. So I do a good coffee measure for every 2 cups. So that's 2, so that's for 4 cups, and then 1 extra for the pot. Okay, so that's my method. We kind of give it a little shimmy shake here, and we're going to put that on, like so. We're going to put our lid on. And you can see this has got, it actually even says Pyrex. This has got a nice big glass dome, and when that water starts boiling, the water will start showing up through our glass dome there. Okay, so now I've got I think this is set up for 6 cups here on the west bend. And because I'm going to use my regular coffee here, I am going to use one of the filters. And I'm just going to use my disc filter. We're going to put that at the bottom. And again, I'm going to put just a little bit of water in there, because now that'll really hold that filter down in place so that when I put the grounds in there, none of them get up under that filter and come through. You still get a ground in there every once in a while, but most of them won't go through. So again, we've got 6 cups of water, 2, 4, 6, 1 for the pot. And just like the other one, we put our basket here, we put our diffuser over the top, we put that on, and we plug it in. And we'll come on back when we're perking. Okay, friends, the water has come to a boil, and I think you can see what's happening there. So it's just starting to perk. So what that means is we come over here and we're going to dial this down to a medium heat. We want it to continue to boil and perk, but we don't need it going full blast now that we're up to the boil. And now we're just going to keep an eye on it, and we rely on 2 things. We rely on our sight to see this is gradually getting darker, and we rely on our smell. And those 2 things tell me when this coffee is ready. Again, it's to taste. So it's probably going to go another 8 minutes or so, and I think then it will be just where I like it. Again, this is not automatic, so this is just going to perk and perk and perk and perk. And it's only when I take it off the heat that it will stop the perking process. Now let's take a look at our automatic over here. Let me zoom in a little bit. You see? That is just starting to perk. See what's going on there? Let me tell you, that west bend is quiet. You can hear the one on the stove, but boy, this one is really quiet. And it's a very gentle perking kind of a action that takes place with that one. So, and I'm just going to, can I just tell you, the coffee aroma now is starting to fill the kitchen, especially between these 2. And, oh, it smells so good. It smells so good, especially in the morning. All right, we're going to let these percolators do its job. Again, I'm not worried about this one because it's an automatic, and so it will go through its perking cycle, and it will just stop, and it will switch to warm. I'll point out, however, on some percolators, like this Sunbeam Coffee Master, it has a dial at the bottom. It says milder, stronger. And basically what this does is it sort of tells the coffee pot how long to perk. So if you like your coffee on the stronger side, you put it here, and it will basically go through its perking cycle longer. If you like a milder cup, you put it here. This was a feature on a lot of coffee pots. Sometimes it was a slide mechanism, or sometimes a dial like this, but it was the same idea. And what it did is it controlled the time that the coffee would perk. Isn't that pretty? That's a pretty one. And I think I pointed out to the one on the shelf. I have a couple of these, and this is the one that started my crazy appliance collecting, so we have that to blame. Let's see what's going on the stove here. We can, well, I think that's starting to look like coffee, isn't it, folks? Another reason to turn you don't want such a rigorous boil when it starts to perk, because otherwise it really pushes those grounds around and can overflow the basket. So we want just a nice, gentle perking action, like so. And then we're going to come back and enjoy a nice cup of coffee. So our coffee is done percolating. Now, before we can enjoy the coffee, we just have to do a couple things after the perk cycle is done. So in the case of the automatic, it'll just stop perking. Sometimes there's a little red light. This particular model doesn't have one. That will come on to tell you that the brewing cycle has completed. Or sometimes, like this one, it'll just stop perking and you'll know it's done. So it's in warm mode now. So it is keeping the coffee warm at serving temperature. But what you do is you'll take the plug out, you'll walk this over to the sink, and you can use a dish towel, or dishcloth, or a paper towel. Pull the basket and stem out and put it in the sink. Look first to make sure that all the coffee has dripped through the basket. All that should be left in the basket is just the wet grounds. Take it out. Put it in the sink. Here's why. One, mostly when you go to pour the coffee, you don't want the coffee in the pot to backfill into that basket and push the grounds out of the top and into the coffee. Okay? You don't want that. The way to ensure that that doesn't happen, especially if you have a full pot, is just to remove the stem and basket. And the other thing too is, even if you have a small partial pot of coffee that you've made, once the coffee has been brewed, any of the bitter sort of tannins left in the coffee could drip down below, and you know what? You don't want those. So just as a practice, get rid of it. On our manual perk, the same thing. Of course, you don't have to unplug it. As soon as the coffee has been perked to a point of your satisfaction, take it off the heat, do the same thing. Check to make sure all the coffee has filtered through the basket, and then remove the basket and stem for the same reasons. Okay? So here is our automatic perked coffee. Now, I drink my coffee black, usually. If I go into some of these coffee places that have opened up in the past number of years, and they are doing these very heavily, to my taste, over-roasted coffees that are very dark and very strong, and I think actually they kind of taste burnt in some cases, then I will add some cream. But for a nice coffee like this out of my percolator, I will take it black. Oh, and it's hot. This is also where percolators sort of have it over drip pots. This coffee is hot. Not that drip coffee is not hot, but it's not hot like this, because remember, that coffee has been boiling, that water going through over and over again, and it's nice and hot, and it stays hot for a long time. That, my friends, is a good, honest cup of coffee. Now, let's come over here. This is the coffee I did on the stovetop. This one's a little bit, just a tad lighter than that coffee, in part because this one was done, and this was still perking away, and I probably could have had it go another 3 or 4 minutes, but I wanted to get them both done so that we could enjoy our coffee here together. But it's also a different brand of coffee and a different grind of coffee. Again, this is a percolator grind, and I have found that the finer the coffee grind, the darker it tends to be. So this is a coarser ground, and so it is a little bit lighter in color. Oh, but it is delicious in flavor. Boy, that's good. So, food friends, I hope you have enjoyed this episode on Vintage Appliances Percolator Edition. And I've done a few videos on coffee making and coffee pots over the years. I'll put links at the end to those in case you want to check those out. And so let me know, how do you make your coffee? And I'd love to know if you have a favorite percolator. Let me know what kind it is. Or maybe you grew up with a percolator in your family to make coffee. I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. So, you know, the wonderful thing about coffee is it's a drink that you can enjoy with friends and family, with company, and it's also good to enjoy just by yourself. Coffee is something that you can drink alone and really enjoy. And so, I got a lot of coffee to drink here, although I actually might do something fun with it, and it won't go to waste, I'll promise you that. But anyways, thank you so much for spending some time for this edition of Cavalcade Food. There is a website, cavalcadefood.com. Please check it out. That will connect you to my other YouTube channel, which is called Always Analog, and my Saturday morning radio program, Cavalcade Radio Hour, and it will let you connect to that. So I hope everybody is doing well. I hope it is getting to be spring wherever it is that you are, and I'll look forward to seeing you again real soon back here on Cavalcade Food. Bye, everybody.